Hello, this is FoodOffensive.com's weekly Fukushima update, where I bring you updates concerning Fukushima, not always concerning just food. I've brought you some of that, but normally here at FoodOffensive.com I cover food-related things that are in our food supply, things that we need to avoid, how can we eat better, what can we do to change kind of the way that our whole food system works. But for the Fukushima updates, I've been bringing you just various things going on, maybe the things that you wouldn't normally see in your news broadcasts, and I wanted to show you some more things this week. It's been a couple weeks. If you watch this regularly, you've noticed I've been silent here on the YouTube channel for a couple of weeks, but I've had some time issues and things getting things out, and I would have liked to apologize for the last couple of Fukushima videos. My camera was away with my wife, and so I had to use my iPhone, and it's just not as forgiving on the color and lighting and things as my DSLR is. So I would like to apologize for that, and hopefully this video and the next few that I do here in the next week will be better quality, but hopefully the information is there, and that's the most important thing, is that the information gets out there. So what I wanted to cover this week is some more radiation testing that was done in America here, in California specifically. I covered an article a couple videos back that covered the tuna caught off the coast of California being contaminated with radiation, and then also some things going on in Alaska that could or could not be related to the Fukushima fallout, but you put two and two together, that's a very likely cause. So going on with this week's update, it's titled, this particular article from EnviroReporter.com, it's titled Highest Radiation in LA Air Yet. And it's by Michael Collins, March 7th of this year, 2012. Basically, they've done some radiation testing, and when a lot of the U.S. testing facilities and things were just shut down, just months after Fukushima, people are still out there doing the testing themselves and trying to get some of those numbers out, and this is what this gentleman has done here. And basically he says, starts out by saying, our last HEPA filter measurement, January 22nd, produced some astonishing results. Doing a spot test on the Honeywell barrel-style filter and a Kenmore plasma wave machine, we found radiation about 351% above the normal background. The machines had been running for 42 days. The combined aggregate dust came in even hotter at about 538% of the normal background radiation at Radiation Station Santa Monica, and that's one of their testing sites. And it goes on to say, a couple paragraphs down, that radiation may be rising in Los Angeles comes as no surprise, considering the enormous amount of radioactive, quote, Buckyballs filled with 60 uranium uranils apiece that continue to be produced at the stricken nuclear reactor site for almost a year. A just-released UC Davis report describing the phenomena is also examined in BetaWatch. Now I'm going to look at a video here that it's quite lengthy. It's about 12 or 15 minutes. You can see it on their site here. It's embedded in their article. But I want to look at this video here for just a couple minutes of it. He explains the Buckyballs thing. It's kind of a weird thing, and so when I saw that, I said I have to go into this further and look at it. So he's going to describe that real quick for a couple minutes, and then we'll come back.
It's one of the best purchases Denise Ann and I have ever made, because what you're seeing being detected here is not going into our lungs. Now we are about double background. You know from following our site and other readings that triple background is considered a hazmat situation, triggers hazmat procedures for the California Highway Patrol. And here we've come up to about double, a little over double. So that's this Kenmore plasma wave HEPA filter. And what we're going to do is, when I'm done spot checking this, I'm going to vacuum everything and get it all in a pile, and then we'll test everything together. This Los Angeles is what we're breathing. we now know the mechanism for what could be the transportation of much of the radioactive goo that's sloshing into the Pacific over at Fukushima Daiichi. A meltdown, triple meltdown that's been going on now for nearly a year. We know that when water hits the fuel, Fukushima Daiichi, that the water hits the exposed fuel and is turned into peroxide, of all things. Not the kind of peroxide you definitely want to go and bleach your hair in. But it creates these things called Buckyballs. Buckyballs are named after Westminster Fuller, who created the Buckminster Fuller, pardon me. Not Westminster, Buckminster Fuller. He created the geodesic dome, and these little buckyballs are nanoparticles that look like that. And what they do is they get up to 60 uranium isotopes of different types and kind of create a cage around them. And this allows for greater mobility of these very heavy isotopes. And by the way, we're still at 142 for a high here. And this study came out in late January, and BioReporter.com got a hand on it. Came out of UC Davis, University of California at Davis, and top-notch team. And this could be what we're seeing here now.
Okay, so his article goes on to say a little bit below that. 1 year after the Fukushima meltdowns began, these readings indicate that ocean-borne radiation may be making its way into waters off of Southern California just months before the inevitable tide of radioactive goo that will wash upon SoCal shores later this year through 2014. So basically they're predicting that this is just a precursor to what's coming down the line, and something we should be aware of with that. And so this whole Buckyballs thing, I hope you kind of got the idea of what it is. It's you know, it's something that we need to look at, something that we need to be concerned about. And there's another article referring to that from the Ventura County Reporter. I believe it's vcreporter.com. And basically this article is just titled Radioactive Nightmare. And this was put out here in the last month or so, June 7th, actually right at a month. And this subtitled, As Fallout from Fukushima Heads Our Way, the Government Turns a Blind Eye. And it kind of describes the Buckyballs again. That's those uranium-filled nanospheres by the salt water that's cooling down the molten cores of the reactors. And it creates these little like geodesic shaped things, and you can see those here. You can see that here on the screen if you're watching the video version of this. And basically, like I said, the video that we just saw kind of pointed those out a little bit more, describe what they are. But he goes on to say in this article from Ventura County Reporter, it says these mobile poisons include cesium-137 and plutonium-239, the latter with a half-life of 24,400 years. So plutonium's not going to go anywhere for quite a while. And then it says, even with government, University of California, and this reporter's tests showing high radiation in the air, water, food, and dairy products in this state, the state and federal governments cut off special testing for Fukushima radionuclides more than half a year ago. So he points out the fact that I alluded to earlier about the testing facilities just being shut off, the testing devices. And it goes on down. This article is quite lengthy. I encourage you to read it, but I just wanted to point out a couple of things here in interest of keeping these videos short. He says the three meltdowns have spewed trillions of becquerels of highly radioactive iodine-131, cesium-137, strontium-90, and plutonium-239 into the atmosphere and the Pacific since March 11, 2011. The initial explosions and fires sent untold amounts of radiation high into the atmosphere. In a February 28 report by the Meteorological Research Institute just released at a scientific symposium in Tsukuba, Ibaraki Prefecture, it's in Japan, says that 40,000 trillion becquerels, double the amount previously thought, have escaped Unit 1 reactor alone. So that's just one reactor that they've estimated that's how much has been released. And it goes on to kind of point out some other things. This isn't just California. This says here, radioactive fallout in St. Louis, Missouri rainfall, which has been monitored at potrblog.com since the crisis began, has been repeatedly so hot that levels have been reached that make it unsafe for children and pregnant women. In October 17, 2011, St. Louis rainstorm was measured on video at 2.76 millirems per hour, or more than 270 times the background. So, quite interesting, the readings that they're getting. And he points out the fact that the U.S. EPA considers anything 3 times background to be significantly above background. And then saying that the St. Louis rain was 90 times the hazmat trigger, which was the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, has a trigger of 3 times background, can be potentially hazardous material situation. So this was 90 times that. So, you know, despite what people might say that are watching these videos, or what you might think that we're just trying to scare people or trying to, you know, point out all the bad that's going on, I just want to point this out. I mean, these are numbers that people are taking that obviously the media is not going to tell you about. At least I haven't seen it. The only thing I saw on the news the other day and kind of motivated me to get these videos going again was the fact that they said that the nuclear reactors was being turned back on. And they didn't specify where or what or how. Just the local news spent literally 15 seconds on the thing. So it's very important that someone gets this out. And so I just want to be one of those other voices out there. It goes on again here. I got a couple more things to point out here before we end. Millions of tons of seawater and fresh water have been used to cool the melted cores and spent fuel rods, generating millions of tons of irradiated water. And of course, we know that water is being let out into the ocean. And then also, a Texas-sized sea of Japanese earthquake debris is already washing up on outlying Alaskan islands, and is expected to have already hit the West Coast, including out California. So, you know, when we look at reasons why sea life and things are having trouble and people are losing hair and things like that, you know, you got to look at these situations. And also, in other words, he's going down to talk about how they shut down these testing sites, how they stopped testing. He says, in other words, no federal agency, department, or administration is doing anything to sample and analyze water from the Pacific. Fish aren't even being tested for contamination either. The EPA did some special monitoring for a few weeks after the accident began, then shut down the special monitoring. So, you know, they just continue to do these things. And so we're almost out of time here, but it says the lesson to be learned is that both the U.S. and Japan suffer from very lax regulation, a too cozy relationship between nuclear regulators and the industry they are to regulate. That's a gentleman named Hirsch. And you can see this article, more in this article, and it's quite lengthy, as I said, but we're going to go look at some of the Japanese people actually protesting this in the future updates here. But until next time, this has been FoodOffensive.com's weekly Fukushima update. Thank you for joining me.